Good morning, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. I'm Ari, that's Niko,
Oh,
and
whoa!
Niko
We had
appears
a
to have
little
dropped
mess
his
up.
mic.
Yeah, we are
That's a
working with
good
some new
start to the
tech.
show. New tech.
My
Niko's got a
apologies.
mic. I'm Ari. That's Niko. We have got a big show for you here this morning. The Seattle Sounders played the Columbus Crew to a 1-1 draw on Sunday Night Soccer yesterday at Lumen Field. Obviously, the match and the result overshadowed by what was a very scary situation with Sounders goalkeeper Stefan Frei coming off his line to try and claim a free kick into the box from Diego Rossi. Huge collision with the Columbus Crew player and was down on the field for several minutes and eventually had to be ambulanced off the field. So we're going to talk about the updates with Stefan Frei. We actually have some very positive updates up that way this morning. We'll talk about the game itself, maybe hit a couple other scores from around MLS, maybe hit some USMNT if there's time. And as always, if you guys got questions or topics that you want us to hit, go ahead and drop them in the chat. But Niko, before we talk about this Stefan Frei situation and the injury update, how you doing here this morning? You got your mic set up?
Yes, we finally got the mic set up. Obviously, we're getting used to it, so I can't move so abruptly because it's attached to the phone. But man, the sound has gotten a lot of praises. I've used it in a couple other shows, and apparently, it makes one big difference. And,
It does.
Our audience had mentioned it, and so here we are, just trying to give the audience what they want. And well, today, is going to be. It's good to talk about the positive updates on Stefan Frei, but it was a scary situation, man. It was a finale there for a good game that we were not expecting, and he kind of damper a little bit of things because once you get in a situation like that where it's a player, but it's a person's well-being kind of goes into risk, just everything goes out the door.
I think it was the scariest situation I've seen on a soccer field. I was at MLS Cup in 2022, LAFC Phil Union, when Maxime Crépeau had a compound fracture on that play at the end of that MLS Cup, which that was scary. But there's something different about a head injury where until you get the update, you just don't know what the outcome is going to be. So yeah, I mean, like you said, it really kind of put a damper on the whole occasion. But
yes, especially when it's so dramatic, right? I mean, it was the collision, and then it was the what they call it, fencing position, where he just kind of tenses up. I mean, that just, you could hear the entire stadium just
silent.
Gasp. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was something insane.
As quiet as I've ever heard Lumen Field. So let's we'll get to the situation with the referee trying to keep the game going. I gave my thoughts on that on the post game live last night. But let's get the positive update out there first and foremost. I'm going to share it on the screen right here, written up on MLSsoccer.com. Stefan Frei injury, Seattle Sounders goalkeeper back home resting. Seattle Sounders goalkeeper Stefan Frei back home resting after suffering a head and neck injury in second half stoppage time. And he has posted on both Blue Sky and Twitter. You can see his message right here. He says, still trying to figure out what happened at the end of the game with an emoji. So he's making jokes. That's a great sign. Love to see that. He says, I'm incredibly grateful to all the staff that looked after me and happy to be back home resting now. What resonates is all the messages, calls, and love I've received from so many of you. Thank you, truly. It means more than I can put into words. I feel the support, and I'm thankful for every single one of you. So just, I mean, great to see that. What a relief. There was so much uncertainty kind of coming off the game in the immediate aftermath. So just to know that he's back home, he's gotten his treatment, and that he's posted on Blue Sky, he's making jokes. Great to see all of that.
Especially because, I mean, Like you said, you were being assessed for a, head and neck injury. It looked like as he was being, carted into the ambulance, he was moving, and that was a positive, and he seemed to be conscious, which obviously is something that's good. But you never know, until now, and still, I want to I wonder what the process to full recovery is going to be for Stefan Frei. I'm sure taking a game off, if not two, but it's good to see that at least his home, everything's okay. But I wonder what's the process, what's the protocol moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian Schmetzer, after the game, he praised Columbus head coach Wilfried Nancy for encouraging the referee Izmir Pekmik to end the match. With only seconds remaining, both clubs agreed a final push for all 3 points wasn't worth it, it says here. And then you have Schmetzer's quote. Schmetz was visibly emotional in the post-game presser. He said, "Wilfried, I appreciate what he did because the ref wasn't going to stop the game. Everyone knew that the game should have been stopped. Good on him. So thank you, Wilfried." And then for Nancy's part, he says, "I hope that everything's going to be okay with Frei. Our job is not easy. When you see a situation like that, again, football is not the most important. We stay positive, and hopefully everything's going to be good for him." So let's talk about that aspect of it, Niko, because I thought that was the craziest part of the whole situation. Evidently, what happened is the referee came over and was like, "All right, we're running the corner kick. Let's do this." And Schmetz was like, "I don't think that we should do that." And then Wilfried Nancy, you could actually see on the broadcast footage, he was also like, "We're not doing that. This is over." So I said it last night on the post game live, but credit to Wilfried Nancy. I already had a lot of respect for him as a coach and what the type of soccer he's able to get his teams to play and all that. But I think that just shows that he's a class act, and it shows the type of person he is. And I'm glad that common sense prevailed in this situation. There's absolutely no way that corner kick can be taken. If it did get taken, I guarantee you Diego Rossi or whoever took it from the crew would have just bopped it to the other side of the field and called it there. But still, it's the principle of it that bothered me. Like, I don't know what we're doing, like keeping the game going even for one corner kick in that situation. Like, imagine if like Columbus had scored off that. Like, I don't, it just feels like a situation where you got to like use your common sense, use your discretion. And the ref, I mean, he called an okay game, but just way off with that. Niko, what do you like? What did you make of that? What was going through his head to even be considering that? I can't figure it out.
Man, I think that common sense at times varies, unfortunately, for different people, and not just the referee, but there were some, I don't even know what to call it, just inhumane comments that were made to me in my social media, after praising Wilfried for just he heard what was going on with Brian Schmetzer. It's not like the referee approached him. He heard what Brian was pleading with the referee, and he makes the move. He's the one that initiates the, hey, yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to play. And in terms of what the referee's thinking, my guess is he went by the book, and sometimes you just got to grab the book and throw it out. And that's what he was doing, right? He's thinking, we're already in overtime, but there was time missing, so I got to add 3 or 4 minutes, and I got to resume play in the corner kick and give Columbus a chance to, put the ball into play and decide to do whatever it is that they want to do. So to that point, I'm like, okay, if you have not even common sense, it's just a general sense of empathy towards not just Stefan Frei, who was unconscious, that just got ambulanced out, but for everybody else that's part of that team. Do you think that Christian Roldan is going to be able to defend a corner after his brother? Right? I mean, this is a family. This is a group that, Stefan Frei, and I said this yesterday, when I was asked about it, Stefan Frei is more than a goalkeeper. He's a role model. He is a captain. He's a leader, and he's a brother to a lot of these people. So the players were gonna. I can't even fathom, having to think about marking Rossi or anybody that's going to be coming in for a strike, and you're thinking about what just happened to Stefan Frei. I mean, there were tears in Jordan and Alex and all of these players. So when you don't have sort of empathy, I think that's when you don't see clearly. So I'm hoping that this sort of situation does get clarified. But a lot of people really thought that the game should have kept going, and I can't really grasp that sort of mentality. But I think that the referee wanted to go by the book. I think that there are fans that are inhumane and they're just thinking, hey, we could steal a point in Seattle. We need it, and it's just sad. It's literally sad that there's a sort of mentality. And look, I don't want to sit here and sound like I'm better than people or all these things. It's just competition is one thing, but whenever you have someone's livelihood at stake, I mean, that should take over everything. And whether that makes somebody better or not, I mean, that's just for people to just realize. If you think that MLS is soft or I'm soft for having this sort of take on it, then whatever. But I would hope that a lot of people make that choice. And you saw how emotional Brian Spencer was. I mean, he was in tears. He was holding back. I mean, his voice was cracking as he thanked Wilfried Nancy, because, it could have been something else. It could have been another coach that, didn't see it that way and wanted that corner to be taken. And it was an emotional wreck from the coaching staff all the way to the players. So it's just a situation that makes us realize that there are good in people, and if we are better than just the game and the competition, then we should strive for that. We should strive for that sort of mentality.
Yeah, I just can't relate to thinking about the game in a situation like that, thinking about a corner kick. I was sitting there like thinking about people in my life that I'd wronged so I could like make amends. Like that's where my head was at. So I don't know. It was just like it was a ridiculous situation, I think, for the referee to just not use his discretion and end it off rip. But I'm glad that it like I said, common sense prevailed, and I think the correct outcome took place. And again, I credit Wilfried Nancy a heck of a lot for that. We all know that he has established a well-earned reputation as like the best tactician, best coach in the league in that way, in terms of X's and O's and his system and on the field and all that. But we talk a lot about, the man managing and the human aspect of coaching as well, and how important that is. And you can see from how he handled a situation like that he is an expert in that regard as well. So, I think I said it last night as well, but I want to reiterate respect to Wilfried Nancy and respect to the Columbus Crew. I think it's an example of them being a well-run, classy organization as well. And happy to share this positive update as well this morning. It seems like Stefan Frei is in good spirits. He made a joke on his Twitter and Blue Sky at home resting. So, what was a very, very scary situation in the moment seems to be on a positive trajectory. So
yeah, and one more thing, Ari, I did hear from quite a few former Sounders, including Nicolas Tadero. He was very concerned. He said, please send everyone my best wishes, including Stefan Frei. So I'll bring that up because Victor Rodriguez, all these guys that have shared the field with Stefan Frei, but more than that is their lives, right? This is a friend, and this is somebody that they know, and the fact that so many people were concerned and send their love, whether it was through social media, like Herculez Gomez and all of these people, but also, like I said, independently, there was a lot of concern. Nicolas Tadero is now in Uruguay. He's completely out of MLS, but the fact that he has that in the back of his mind, and that he heard about what happened, he saw what happened, and he wanted to reach out. I think that that says a lot for Niko and Stefan Frei. That as I mentioned, he's such a big part of this community. Sounders wise, I mean, beyond the trophies and the saves and everything, I think that he's really become an icon in the community, in Seattle in general, in MLS, and that many people that want to wish you your best. I mean, I think that just says a lot about Stefan Frei.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's nice to hear that guys like Niko and V-Rod still have that connection to the team, and those two guys in particular, we know that they're also class acts and great guys. So not surprising to hear, but nice to hear. Jonathan Mart says, glad Frei is doing okay. Where did all of the messaging of Frei's retiring after the season come from? ESPN mentioned it in an article, and Jeremiah said there are reports, but they've all been false. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that happened because they use like AI to write those. That's the only that I read that ESPN report, and that like once you see how ChatGPT works, you can like suss it out. They're definitely doing that, and that's why you don't do that. That's why it's stupid. If the tech is not perfected yet, clearly, and it's very obvious. ESPN, if you're watching, it's very obvious when you do that, and when you do that. Stuff like that happens, so you should stop that and probably never try it again. They're not going to listen to me, but I'm pretty sure that's why that happened.
Well, I missed that report. That's interesting.
It was like a ESPN wire service. There was no byline on it, and it had a line in there that said Frei is retiring at the end of the season. There's been no report of that. He's never said that. They're like, have you heard anything about that? I haven't. Like, that's it's completely because ChatGPT saw that he was 39 and just assumed that, and then whoever was just cut and pasting from that and throwing it out onto the ESPN publication didn't fact check it because they don't care. So good job, ESPN. Great reporting, great organization by blatantly spreading misinformation because you are too cheap to pay someone to actually write your stuff, I guess. Pretty like, oh God, that's just another irritating thing to come out of it, I guess. But I guess, Niko, we can talk about the game itself a little bit. It was a good game. But anything else on the Steph situation before that, or should we just get into what happened on the field a little bit?
Yeah, last thing I'll say was that I thought it was great to see Brian just let his feelings out. A lot of times we judge the coach, and we judge the strategist and the motivator. But yesterday I thought that he was really vulnerable, and he just let it out. So I praise him for being so candid about the whole situation. And secondly, I thought it was cool that he also brought up the Diego Jota, right? I mean, we're coming from like a week where we just heard about the passing of another footballer, and this Sounders team also dealt with the news of João Pablo tearing his same ligament from back to a couple of years, and that has hit him incredibly hard, mentally, and just beyond physically. It's just that mental state. So all of it just seems like the way it was wrapped up, as there are things that are bigger than soccer. I thought it was great the way Brian kind of phrased it and put it together.
Absolutely. And if there was anything else that I took away from Schmetzer's presser, he was alluding to sort of what I was referencing earlier of like it's been a heavy week on multiple fronts for the Steph situation, but also the other couple situations that you mentioned, and it kind of puts into perspective life versus football. And Schmetz was talking about just like be good to each other. Don't sweat the small stuff type message, and that's sort of what I was trying to get at on the post game live as well. Do something nice for somebody. If you're engaged in a beef or conflict with somebody, squash it. It's probably not that important. These types of situations sort of bring that bring that to the forefront. So I agree. It was good on Schmetz for how he handled himself. Good on Wilfried Nancy for how he handled himself and the Columbus Crew and all that. And hopefully Steph Frei stays on the mend, and we'll see him back at Long Acres soon.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about the game, because it was, up until then, a really good game. High level soccer being played out there by both teams. Two really good teams going at it is what it looked like to me. Hard fought, competitive to the very last moment. Columbus Crew get the first goal from Diego Rossi on a very classic Columbus Crew goal. God, the way that they can just slice and dice a defense like that, it's very impressive. They do it week in, week out, and have been doing it ever since Wilfried Nancy has been the coach of that team. That was not great defending, but also you got to credit Columbus for the execution on that sequence. They set up those tap-ins as well, if not better than anyone in MLS. So I wasn't super shocked to see them get one of those. And I actually think holding them to one goal in any given game, home or away, is a relatively good day at the office defensively. Obviously, you want to keep a clean sheet, but going against this Crew team that's that good in possession and that lethal in transition, and then they have guys like Diego Rossi who can finish off those chances, they can be tough to stop in that way. So good goal for them. And then Seattle hits back with what was a very good high-level equalizer. What a play by Kalani Kosarienzi to set this one up. He wins the ball off that guy out wide and then just makes the run all the way towards the penalty box. And then a really good run by Paul Rothrock. Good awareness to make sure he stayed on side, which God knows there's been issues with that with the Seattle Sounders this season. So glad he stayed on side. And then great vision and execution by KKR to find him for what ended up being a pretty easy finish for Paul Rothrock in a similar way that was a similar type finish to the one Diego Rossi got for the Crew. And then from there, it was a brawl back and forth. And Brian Schmetzer talked about it after the game, but I like Seattle's game plan here, and I thought they executed it pretty well. And in general, I think there's a lot of positives to take from this performance, Niko. Like, I don't know about you, but like anytime you're going into a measuring stick game like this against one of the best teams in MLS, it's a chance to show that if you're in a situation, maybe come playoff time or in another big game down the line against a team like this, how do you handle it? Can you compete? Can you hang with them? And Seattle did that. And Schmetzer noted the possession splits, which when you have a team that's as good in possession as Columbus, you don't want to cede them the ball as maybe you do in different matchups. So the fact that the split ended up 52-48 in any game against the Crew, that's, I think, a good starting point, and they were able to do that. So I thought that was a good sign. And if I was going to critique anything, there was some wastefulness in attack. Jesus Ferreira had the one early off. Looks like I've lost Niko, so I guess I'm just going to keep cooking while I wait for him to rejoin. Jesus Ferreira had the chance early. There he is. Got you back. The Rothrock to Ferreira chance is the one that I was talking about, like right after kickoff.
Hey Ari, I don't know. I think I lost you. I don't know if it's on me or it's on your end. I'm trying to figure it out. Having some technical difficulties here.
All right. I'm gonna take you off the stage and then give me a thumbs up. Maybe like bounce and rejoin. Sorry about the technical difficulties, folks, but we'll try and get Niko back on here as soon as possible. So yeah, but what I was saying is it was, I think overall a good day defensively. You give up the first goal, which you never want to do, but holding the Columbus Crew to one goal, even when they're on the road, it's just not that easy to do. So the fact that they were able to do that, I think, was a positive sign, especially because you had Alex Roldan starting at center back once again, which when we get Niko back on here, we'll talk about that, because Jay Bell was available for this game, and they went with Alex Roldan again, which I'm not going to lie. When I saw the starting 11, I saw that they were starting Alex at CB again, And I was like, okay, I mean, it worked versus Austin FC, which is one of the worst attacking teams in MLS. Is it going to work against this team, the Columbus Crew? I don't know. It feels dicier, just because it's still a position that he had played one time in MLS. There's always going to be a learning curve there, but apparently not really much of one. I thought Alex was pretty lights out again, to be honest with you. So I don't know if they're going to keep running that. Yaimar will be back soon. Kim Ki-hee should theoretically be back soon. So they're probably not going to need to do that, at least in the short term. But there's a couple factors at play. One we were discussing, I was discussing with people at the game yesterday, and then also on the post game live, is that as we bring Niko back onto the stage here.
Hey, what's going on? Was that me? Did the whole thing fall apart, or was it just me?
So when you hopped back on the first time there, I could hear you, but it seems like you couldn't hear me. But you can hear me now. So
yeah, now we're all good, man. I don't know who's messing with our feed, man. Someone's messing with our feed.
You know, it wouldn't be a Lobbing Scorchers episode without some sort of tech issues. So it's all good. But I'll just bring you right back into the to what I was riffing on, which was Alex Roldan starting at center back again.
Yeah.
With John Bell available. I was telling the people that that was a source of I don't know if skepticism is the right word, but cautious concern, because it went well. It went genuinely well against Austin, but that's Austin. They've scored the fewest goals in the league. So when you're talking about the jump from playing a position you've never really played before at the MLS level against Austin FC versus doing it against the Columbus Crew, it's like a different animal, right? So I was a little concerned about it. I'm not gonna lie, but then he ended up doing pretty well again. But I guess outside of Alex's performance, which I think we off these two games, it's good knowledge to have to know that he can deputize at CB like that, and the defense can maintain its level and be effective. But what did you just make of the fact that they did that when they had a natural CB, John Bell, available? Why do you think they did that? And what did you think of the decision at the time?
Look, I was just like you. I was skeptical about him getting a second go at it. I thought that he played very well against Austin, but Austin was a team that, as we talked about during that episode, they're just not that dangerous offensively, something that Columbus is, right? And Columbus also has a lot of movement. You talked about that, the way that the first goal was constructed, and the way they move the ball, and the way that there's so much fluidity to Moreira from a center back position, taking space and being in dangerous positionings. The Rossi, he has all this freedom to move around. Russell Road is a guy that pressures you a lot. So there was going to be a lot of challenges for Alex Roldan, and I actually said prior to the game that was going to be the story, and almost what would determine whether or not Seattle would get a result. And I thought that Alex was phenomenal in both defending, his positioning, his anticipation, and specifically, and I think this is why they've been doing this, on the ball. Seattle has been very clear, even in the Club World Cup, that they're willing to play out of the back, even when they're facing the best in the world. And I think Alex is better than Jonathan Bell with the ball. And I mean, that's nothing new, but I had apprehensions about where he was getting the ball. That is completely different where he was getting the ball when he plays the fullback position, but he's just adapted so well. So he's just comfortable on the ball. I think that his dynamism and his speed, his recovery, some of the things that he does, maybe he doesn't have the physicality that Bell has, but I feel like his overall ability to cover space has really gotten him going, and has really helped this team be better in all fronts, right? With the ball, off the ball. There was a play, and I forgot who is the maybe it was Gosdock that gets a through ball in the 18, and he completely outbodies the player and then takes the ball back and makes a good pass. I just think that Bell had some issues, and he's a left-footed player, where the way they set up the build out, I feel like you kind of need a right-footed player next to Jackson Reagan to put Jackson Reagan in his best position to be successful in this build out. And with Alex Roldan, that's worked. And I feel like they needed that. Was the right-footed player that could be easier on the ball, that could get out of the back. And I think Alex Roldan has checked all those boxes. And again, the concern was going to be on the air, the physicality, where he positions himself, and he has amended very well. Initially, in that first goal by Columbus, I thought that maybe it was Alex that got caught off guard, but it ended up being Kalani that was just out of position. He gets turned around on that side. I think both fullbacks actually in Columbus's goal have defensive woes. I think Kalani's too high. I think that he rushes in the emergency defense, and there's two guys to the ball carrier. And then when that through ball goes to, not through ball, but the crossing ball goes to Diego Rossi, New is nowhere to be found. And if you go back in that play, I think he got cut off as well, kind of too far up, but then he's just jogging towards the marker. I don't know if he doesn't expect Rossi to get the ball there, but he clearly was the one guy that was going to get the ball on that far post, and it ends up being a mistake that cost that specific goal. But Alex Roldan, in that specific play, he was well positioned. He was marking the right guy. So all of it to say that I think Alex has been very good, almost a revelation there for this team that has such a need for a guy that could just hold the fort until some of these guys get back. Yammer Gomez Andrade apparently is far along, and he probably will be back maybe next game, maybe off the bench, get some minutes. So that's a positive. But for now, Alex Roldan has been outstanding. And Kalani, despite that mistake on that goal, I thought he was very good moving forward. I thought that he had a very good game prior to that double yellow that Brian Smester calls soft, and I happen to agree. But he was very good moving forward. It wasn't just that specific play where he cuts inside and he takes his space and then he finds Paul Rothrock where he found him, but the entire game, I thought that he found himself in very good positions. I thought that he gets the ball, he gets to just prime assist positions very consistently. So all in all, man, between Alex and Kosa Rienzi and Paul Rothrock, you're starting to see some guys that are either starting to be clear starters, like Paul Rothrock. I think that there's no way that you move him out now. It's going to have to be Paul and whoever else you decide, whether it's Ferreira, whether it's De La Vega, or whether it's Ryan Kent. But Paul Rothrock is always going to be that guy in because he's earned that starting position. And then Kalani. I think Kalani is making a very good case for, if you need a goal, and he could play the fullback. Before it was just wingback, but I feel like now he's getting used to the fullback position. And I would agree with Brian in that the game has to slow down for him a little bit. He's too rushed at times, but I feel like those are things that will eventually come to him. And, that's just credit to this team's depth. We talked about depth. That was that was the thing going into this season. And I feel like although the top talent still maybe could be questioned, the depth has been proven, has been tested, and has been proven pretty consistently this season.
Yeah, let's talk about that winger situation because that's the next topic I wanted to hit. But I did want to say before we get into that regarding KKR, I agree. Like he really, you can see the attacking gifts that he has, and he kind of brings a new, different element to that position in that way. And you're right. I think both fullbacks culpable to a certain extent on the goal. Knew who you have to assign some of the blame there as well. But KKR continues to look very, very good in attack. And of course, the red card on the second yellow at the end of the game was unfortunate, arguably soft, but I can see why it was given. However, I do have a petty complaint, if I may. I realize this is sour grapes, but it's happened twice this year where Seattle's been in that exact situation, but the other way, where the opposing player is on a yellow card and commits the second yellow card offense, and the referee doesn't give the player the second yellow because they don't want to send the guy off. Both times it happened. Jackson Travis in Colorado, and then Markonich in the Minnesota game, which Seattle ended up losing, where he absolutely needed to be sent off based on a second yellow offense that everyone knew was a second yellow offense, right? Like, it's not like there's any question about that, but you could literally see the refs in real time be like, oh, I already gave that guy a yellow. If I give him another one, even though it was a yellow offense, if I give him another one, I have to send him off, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to affect the game like that, so I'm going to let it slide. That has happened 2 times to Seattle this season. One time could have cost them. It probably did cost them a win in Colorado, because that happened at a point in the game where I think it was a tie game. And if they were playing that up a man for that amount of time for the rest of the game, I think the odds are pretty good that they end up winning that game. And then the Minnesota game, it probably cost them at least a point in that game as well. That was early enough in the game too, where it would have given Seattle a man advantage for the rest of the game. The referee in this situation figures, oh, it's the end of the game, so I can send him off. It doesn't matter that much. This is not how those decisions are supposed to be made. Okay. Like I said, I know it's petty. I know it's sour grapes, but if that is a second yellow on KKR, then it's got to be like a consistent standard where Jackson Travis and Anthony Markonich are also sent off. All right. That's all I got to say about that. Come on now.
That's fair. That is a fair complaint. I will allow it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and like you can go back and watch the shows. I was whining about this at the time of those calls as well. Yeah. So this isn't just like retroactive sour grapes. This is sour grapes that I've already had. So, like I said, no real issues with the principle of sending KKR off on that, but it's like you gotta Seattle needs to be the beneficiary of that in those situations too. You can't just call this stuff one way and send off Seattle's guys and then give the other guys passes twice. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. But Niko, let's talk about this winger situation, because I think this is among the most interesting kind of lineup discourse that we got going on right now. I think Lobbing Scorchers kind of inadvertently started some heated discourse on this topic, because on our last show, Noah and I were talking about how, what you were saying, that we felt like Paul Rothrock is essentially, to me, from my perspective, if we're going by the eye test, it looks pretty clear that in terms of who generates the most danger from that position and who is offering the most end product right now, I don't really see the other answer other than Paul Rothrock. Jesus Ferreira has scored a couple goals in the last in the last couple weeks, which is good to see. But I don't think he hasn't been as consistent as Paul Rothrock this season. And if you're going just purely by the eye test and the production in the last few weeks, it really should be Rothrock and Ferreira. But Rothrock, I think it's pretty much fair to say that he is one of those guys, and he showed why in this game, getting himself into a dangerous spot and then scoring the goal. He does that sometimes. He actually puts the ball in the net, which can be a novel concept at times. So I saw nothing in this game to dissuade me of that notion, which some people didn't like. But I do think it brings up an interesting question about the stock of Pedro de la Vega, because right now you have a situation where one of your starting wingers is on a $100K salary from coming to the club. I mean, he's an academy kid, but he was on Toronto FC2 playing for Georgetown and Notre Dame, and he's getting starts over your Argentine designated player who you spent $7 million on, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that if Paul Rothrock is performing to the level that he's been performing, especially the last couple games. But when you're talking about your long-term roster construction, that's not an optimum situation to be in. And I was saying that I thought it was weird that De La Vega didn't play at all in the PSG game. Now it's pretty clear that he is like a backup role player, like bit part cameo guy on this team right now. And that's, I mean, that's not ideal, is it? Like, what do you make of this whole situation with this part of the depth chart?
Yeah, look, the Pedro de la Vega situation, it's very concerning to me, simply because that is a guy that statistically probably is better than Paul Rothrock to a certain level, to a certain level. But Paul Rothrock has such a high floor and does so many of the necessary things to make the system works that, to me, right now, he is without a doubt the starting winger for this team. I mean, we'll talk about the other side, but to me, some of the positions that he got into yesterday, he has that chance in front of goal. Maybe he should do better with. He gets a great ball from Albert Rusnak, and maybe he needs to finish that. And that's where people are kind of going to lay the line. Is that's what Rothberg needs to do, right? He needs to elevate that finished product in front of goal. But then you go back to the first goal, and he put that one away. So when you have a team that has needed goals, and he's one of the wingers that has provided that, it's kind of hard to get him off. But I'll go back to his work rate, and I'll go back to, there was a play in the first 10 minutes of the game where I looked at Jeremiah and I was like, that's why Brian Smetzer loves Paul Rothrock, right? I mean, there's a ball over the top. He's, battling Morera. He's moving him. He's pushing him. He gets the ball, creates a foul. I mean, those sort of situations is what you want to see out of Paul Rothrock. But I don't want to limit him, and I don't want to snub him on how good he is on the ball. He puts that potential assist in the second minute to Ferreira. He creates that, and Ferreira should do better with that and should probably put that one away. So by all eye test, examination by me, I feel like Paul Rothrock's floor is so high that you know what you're going to get out of Paul Rothrock. Now, the Pedro de la Vega situation is concerning because you did bring a guy that was talented, that was different, that is one of, well, actually, in my opinion, the best 1v1 attacker when it comes to being a guy that is going to beat you off the dribble. He's supposed to be the guy that was going to be your X factor, your spark plug. He's done it sporadically when he's coming off the bench, but I feel like he needs more minutes on the field in order to regain his confidence, in order to get right, to be more influential for this team. But it's a tough positional room. I mean, right now, by moving Ferreira to the winger position, you just overpopulated that position to an extent that now minutes are kind of hard to come by. So you're in a really difficult situation where you're paying a huge salary to your designated player that right now is on the outside looking in. And even if you were to put him instead of Ferreira, I feel like you're still in a position where you're going to be thinking, okay, if Pedro has a decent game, I'm still going to go with Ferreira for the next one. And that's a tough place to be, because if you're going to need De La Vega to be lights out every single time that he's on the field, when what he needs is minutes to get to his top form, then he might never get there this season. So it's very concerning. It's almost as if right now his best value is what can we get for him when this transfer window opens up. And maybe it's a win-win situation for the player and for the club, where do you go and get an 8 or a 6 if you are able to move Pedro along somewhere else, and you use those funds or part of those funds to go and get you a potential senior midfielder to replace a guy like João Pablo. Because as much as I really like Snyder Burnell, he's 18. And you cannot, you got to wait for him to just develop. So you need a guy that's going to be able to come in and help you out in that center midfield. So do you do that? So it's concerning in so many ways, because if you don't, you're going to end up the rest of the season with your designated player on the bench being a super sub, where you might not get the best out of him, either on the field or when it comes to your overall roster construction. So it's real difficult, man. I see a Pedro de la Vega that is struggling to hit the floor running, and I think a lot of it has to do with confidence, and I just don't know when or where he's going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the very least like a topic that needs to be discussed. I know a lot of people feel like Brian Schmetzer is sort of snubbing Pedro de la Vega and not giving him an opportunity to show what he can do. I know there was stats getting posted around that were very like clearly subtweeting me of like comparing Paul Rothrock to Pedro de la Vega's like underlying numbers, and de la Vega's came out actually slightly ahead of Paul Rothrock. But what I saw were stats that were pretty much the same. Like there was one stat in particular, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like de la Vega was like a tiny bit ahead of Rothrock, and people were like, see, like de la Vega is actually the one who should be starting, not Paul Rothrock. Like he came out ahead here, which okay, but like if it's that close and it's a toss-up between them, which the stats that I saw were players whose underlying numbers were pretty much the same, that's the issue. That's the issue. That's what I'm saying. Like, and if you're going by performance and final product, like you have to admit, anyone would have to admit it's at the very least debatable, and it shouldn't be. There should not be like a heated debate or heated discourse over who should be getting the starting minutes between the two of them, but there is. So that's not ideal. It's just not ideal. It's not ideal, and they're gonna have to figure out how to manage that. But another thing I will say, and I made this point last night, but when you have a situation where things are roughly equal in terms of the underlying stats and stuff like that, stuff like expected dog and work rate and playing defense is what's going to win out. And that's part of why I think Paul Rothrock has earned the starting job, even though it's not like de la Vega is like a low work rate player at all. He runs a lot. He works hard. I definitely don't fault him for any of that. But Paul Rothrock is like the guru of that stuff. The guy plays as hard as anybody. He runs as much as anybody, and he's a dog on defense. So the fact that their underlying stats are coming out roughly the same, and he brings all those other attributes at such a high level, it's probably going to win out in Schmetzer's eyes. And I think that's justified. Like, I know like people think that we on this show, like cap for Rothrock as like a bid or something. That's really not what it is. It's like, I'm trying to judge it on the merits. So I don't know. That's just how I see it. I know like, that take turned out to be more unpopular than I probably expected. I thought everyone was on the pro Rothrock starting bandwagon with us, but I guess not. But I'm gonna keep saying how I see it, because I think that, I don't know. I think it's correct. Anything else?
No, and I think that there's a lot of good points to your argument, and one of them that I would have to credit Paul Rothrock for is that he's just been more reliable, more dependable, right? He just seems to be a very durable guy, and it's something that Pedro hasn't been able to do. Now, my concern is that this isn't the first U22 or DP or international that has kind of come and not worked out for the Sounders team, and that to me it's a broader concern. Leo Chu came in and he had moments, but never really hit his stride or what you wanted out of that U22 position. Emono Sashini was a guy that was brought in and barely saw the field. And now Pedro de la Vega is a guy that just, the more time that goes on, the more he seems to get farther and farther away from a starting position. And I just don't know what it is that's not working, what it is that bringing in international players of caliber is not really working for this system. So I do wish, and this is something that I've said before, I think that there are times where you have to give a guy minutes so he shows you in a consistent base what it is that he provides you. And I don't think that Pedro has gotten that chance. So that's where I have a
That's
bit
fair.
of an issue with Brian Smetzer's decisions at the Club World Cup stage and even before that. Whenever you are deciding not to play a guy like Pedro de la Vega, you're essentially not giving him the minutes to get in form. And additionally to that, you're kind of killing his confidence and killing what he could potentially be doing for you. So I do feel like there is a need for, at times, you just play your designated player. You just got to play him. You just got to let's see what you give me. Let's see what you provide me. And I feel like there were chances and opportunities during the Club World Cup that were missed, and you could have tried to figure out a way to unlock Pedro de la Vega a little bit more. But this is something that I do want to try to get to the bottom of: is, what is it about not developing young international players when they come into the Sounders, rather than the academy guys that do have that Brian Schmetzer DNA and they play Schmetzer ball, and that's great because it'll give you results. But at the same time, it's kind of killing your top end talent, because if you cannot unlock and develop these players that you're essentially committed money to, you're going to be limited. You're going to continue to be limited as a team. And then when it comes to playing the top teams in MLS, and when it comes to, like this particular game where you dominated 30 minutes out of the second half, but you still were only able to get a draw at home as a result, you started to think, what if we had a little bit more of that end product, more of that higher talent that would put away games like this one. So obviously we're dealing with a situation where we still have to see Jordan Morris back in this lineup. We still have to see Jordan Morris get in top shape and form to see how the system works. But when it comes to Pedro de la Vega, I feel like you're always going to be missing a huge part of your potential by not unlocking him and not develop him into a influential player.
I agree with the take that there's been more opportunities to get him run and get him minutes than he has been given, which is detrimental to the cause. Like, even like, you need to give him at least enough minutes to get a better evaluation, right? So even in the game last night, he comes in for the last
20
minutes, last 20,
17.
Give him 30, give him bring him on earlier in the second half, so he at least has enough minutes in these cameos where you can get a better the game yesterday, a 20-minute cameo. Did he look super great? No, but what do we really know what to make of that one way or the other in that short of a time frame where everyone else were evaluated, or not everyone else, but everyone who started the game is getting way more minutes for us to be able to gauge their performances on. So it is tough. It's a tough balance, and I think Rothrock should be starting for this team right now. But there are ways, and there should be ways, to get De La Vega more minutes than he's been getting. So you got to figure this out, man. You can't go in. It's sort of they went through a similar situation with Leo Chu, where he wasn't getting enough run to be able to evaluate him one way or the other, and that was kind of an issue his whole time with the team. And I think that is what you hit on with just the general international scouting outcomes that they've gotten with Leo Chu and now De La Vega. This is relevant because, as you reported, Niko, the Seattle Sounders made an offer, if I'm not mistaken, for a Dutch forward for this U22 spot by the name of Noah Ohio, which that's a very Lobbing Scorchers name on multiple fronts. But Noah Ohio has been linked to the Sounders. They've apparently made an offer, and I'm curious your take on this, Niko. I haven't gotten your take on Noah Ohio, but I'll tell you just my first reaction, which is that I think, okay, there is an underlying concern of any player of this profile, specifically with Seattle, just given what we've seen with Leo Chu and now De La Vega. I already would have been like, I don't know. But I'll be honest. I'll just be honest. Like what my first reaction was, and I think I said this last night as well. But Noah Ohio, when you look at his transfer mark, you look at his career, like all the clubs he's played for, the numbers he's put up, the appearances he has, and all that stuff. I've seen a lot of MLS clubs sign U22s of this exact type of rough profile in terms of their career trajectory and production and future outlook and all that. And it just doesn't usually work. Like, I will tell you that. Like the percentage odds of it being like a smash hit where they're a true impact, move the needle type contributor for the first team, there's just not a lot of examples of it. And it's like players that I could, maybe I'll go down the list at some point of player. It's the exact same idea of guy for in a lot of these situations. The hit rate is super low, but that doesn't mean that it can't hit. There have been ones that hit. Portland has hit on a few guys that are sort of a similar profile of Noah Ohio. Dejan Joveljic is obviously the gold standard, but I think he had a lot more pedigree when he came to MLS than Noah Ohio does. When we're talking about guys like Noah Ohio, it's projection. It's you're betting on, you're gambling on future upside, which is inherently risky, especially for a young player. And for whatever reason, the U22 mechanism, the hit rate on players of this exact profile, it just isn't that high. So that's not to say that Noah Ohio wouldn't be able to come into this team and hit and be a great player. It's just when I look at it, I'm like, all right, the odds are kind of stacked against this. That's just my honest first reaction. So anyway, regarding your report with Noah Ohio, is there any updates or new information? And then what's your take on the potential transfer and what you make of the type of player and his odds of actually becoming an impact contributor for this team?
Yeah, no updates yet. I expect this to move a bit slowly for now, and then probably pick up in a couple of weeks. He was obviously with the U21 Netherlands team where he scored a goal, and I think that there are some things still to be worked out and to be looked at, but at least we know, as we reported, that there is an offer on the table for the player, that there is obviously ongoing communications and formal negotiations for Noah Ohio. I think that there are three things that I like about the player. One is the profile. He's a big 6 foot type of striker, which you don't have right now. He's very pacey. He's strong on challenges. He is, by all accounts and what I've heard, a guy that could play as a target at 9, that, you know, he's good on the hold-up play, that he's a great finisher, that he's good on the air, although he doesn't have a lot of air goals necessarily statistically talking, but the underlying numbers just say that he's very good at just challenging at those spots. Number 2 is the age. We knew that the Sounders were going to go look for a guy that was, if not proven because of the budget complications, at least someone that has a lot of pro games. And I think that Ohio does, right? He's a guy that's going to be right at the cusp of the U22 initiative because of his age. And when you look at his trajectory, I feel like there's enough that you could say, okay, this guy's going to come in and he's going to perform. He's going to be a guy that has been there, done that. He's experience beyond his age for a 22-year-old because of the European style of soccer. And finally, I think that when it comes to a guy that plays in a league that's very quick, that's very direct, that's very physical as well, that I feel like if you compare some of the guys that have come from that league, have adapted quick into MLS play, I feel like it's a good way about it. But as there are good things, there are things that are concerning. The fact that he's bounced around so many organizations, it's concerning. The fact that he hasn't played over 1,400 minutes necessarily in one specific season is also something to look at. And of course, is what you mentioned, that curb for a U22 player that even Joveljic had when he came into the league. You know, some say it's because of Chicharito Hernandez that was taking some of the minutes, but here's the same situation. Jordan's going to be the guy. And if not Jordan, then Masovsky is going to be the guy. So Noah Ohio is going to have to kind of fight for those minutes, and how quickly can he perform under those limitations is still to be determined. When you talk about strikers or forwards at that level, I think of Brenner for Cincinnati. It took him a couple of years to get there. Jovel is the same thing. So all this to say that although I think Seattle went with the type of profile player that they don't have, that they needed, that's going to go with Craig Weibel has told us that he was not going to get a player that he didn't feel that was going to come in and contribute, and that he didn't have in the clubhouse. He didn't want to just bring another guy that he could say, yeah, well, anybody else in this clubhouse could do it. I feel like Noah Ohio has a very specific style of play, a very specific profile, and that's a good thing. And I think that the Sounder fan base should be excited for a guy of this caliber, and we'll see where that what that final number is, right? We've heard of the $2 million range because of transfer market. I've heard that it's going to be more than $3.5 million for the player. So we'll see where that lies, and there we can compare of what type of investment Seattle made for this player, because there will be an issue next year to figure out how to add him into the roster, because as I mentioned, he's at the end line of that U22 initiative, and you're going to have to find a spot for him if you do get him, if he does perform as we all hope that he does.
What's your impression of where things stand as far as the likelihood that this deal actually gets done and Noah Ohio becomes a Seattle Sounder? I know you said the offer is down, but do you think it's sort of still 50-50 that it gets accepted and that it's up in the air type situation if they're actually going to get this transfer done? Or is your read on it like, no, this is probably in all likelihood happening, barring some sort of last minute changes or someone backing out or something like that?
For all accounts, and as of this weekend, talking to a couple of sources, it sounds like they're confident, but as I mentioned, it's going to be slow and steady. Nobody's making any assumptions on it just yet, but I think that level of confidence is high. I don't like putting numbers on things necessarily, but I was asked yesterday in Spanish radio. I would say that, my confidence level is like at a 70%, that okay, that things do get done, that hopefully that there is some pushback. I hear from fans of that club about the amount of money that you're sending a player of this age into MLS, which, as we all know and love, gets treated like a lesser league. So it's like, why are you sending this prospect into a lesser league, and yada, yada, yada. So we'll see how that kind of goes about. And Jeremiah Oshan, of course, he just sent me a message that he will be a U22 player next year, so that won't be an issue. So that's all good and well, as if you do get this player, by the way.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. 70% likelihood. So it seems like there is a more than solid chance that Seattle do make this transfer for Noah Ohio. I'm going to keep an open mind. I hope people don't get it twisted. I'm not condemning him to bust status already. I'm just pointing out that I think these U22 spots are the degree of difficulty you're threading on hitting on guys that actually make an impact in MLS. It's a very high degree of difficulty, so we should keep that in mind. It's a higher degree of difficulty than like a customary transfer for a more veteran player who's a little older and has more experience. You're hedging a lot more on inexperienced guys just already in general. And then also, I have looked at the list of U22s that and gone over it of all the ones that every MLS club has signed, and there's a lot of swings and misses in there. And then you throw in Seattle's recent track record of Leo Chu never really getting run and never breaking out in MLS, and Pedro de la Vega still yet to do that stuff. There's a lot of uncertainty, but I don't want to discount the chance that there is also a possibility that he comes in and is an impact contributor either right away or realistically, it's probably going to take some time. Like you mentioned, even Dejan Joveljic, who's held up as the gold standard for U22 signings, he wasn't playing. Although the way I remember that situation, you can tell me if you remember this differently, Niko. I remember that being like Chicharito was playing over him because he was Chicharito and because Chicharito was actually really good in MLS when he was healthy. But I remember Dejan Joveljic kind of scoring goals for them for day one, to the point where Galaxy fans were like, this guy, I mean, I don't know what you got to do, like playing him and Chicharito as dual strikers, because it's not like Chicharito could have been benched at that point. But every time he was getting his opportunity, it felt like he was scoring goals. He just was a little buried on the depth chart with Chicharito being their workhorse. I mean, do you I don't know if the development curve with him was as much as some of the other U22s. I feel like he was pretty good from day one. Do you remember that differently?
Yeah, I agree to a certain level. I think that he, in his first couple of appearances, he got at least one goal. I remember that. And I do remember that there was a level of halfway through the season when Javier Hernandez started to fall into a cold streak and he had some injury stuff that he could have gotten more minutes. But there was another guy, and I can't remember, but there was a little bit of, I think they were taking it very easy with Joveljic. I think that he performed, but I think that they were not giving him as many minutes, maybe purposely, to just kind of develop him a little bit. And that's where I feel like Noah Ohio could have similar obstacles here. Because like I said, Jordan Morris is going to be the guy. And so it's, Musovski is a guy that has earned all the kind of goodwill and trust from Brian Smetzer. So he's going to be the first guys on deck. So where does Noah Ohio fall, and how quickly can you develop him? That's going to be the big question if this ends up being the guy that you do get.
Jose makes a good point in chat. Wouldn't Diego Gomez, Inter Miami, be the gold standard for U22? Bought and sold pretty quickly for a hefty fee, but also seriously contributed. Yeah, Inter Miami, it's a good point. Inter Miami in general are one of the teams that, when I looked at this, had, I mean, their track record of signing like young South American prospects is honestly pretty incredible. They have a few of them on the team right now.
And go look at the transfer price for Diego Gomez. I don't have it here, but I guarantee you that he was a high level type of acquisition. I mean, this is not a Noah Ohio type of acquisition.
No,
I mean, Inter Miami was getting the best prospects: Redondo, Diego Gomez, Segovia. These are some of the best prospects in South America. They're not going shopping at Goodwill or they're shopping high end. You know what I mean? So it's obviously going to give you a different type of guy. Not to mention a different type of player. Obviously, Diego Gomez being a midfielder, but I do feel like the U22 strikers, to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Chad or whoever's out there, it feels like it takes a little bit longer in MLS than a midfielder or a winger or a defender, for that instance.
Absolutely. And when it comes to a guy like Diego Gomez, you're talking about just a different level of pedigree. And as James points out, Inter Miami has a cheat code. They can get young stars because they want to play with Messi. Absolutely. That's a huge part of it. They've created like an environment where it's not even just the young South American prospects that want to come play for them and play with Messi. It's the Barca boys, and then you have guys like Allende, who's not really like a U22, but is a very well regarded player like from South America. And a lot of these guys like Diego Gomez got transferred to the EPL, if I'm not mistaken, for a ton of money. And they're sort of just playing like a different game with it, where
they are
like I have a hard time comparing anybody, let alone Seattle. But Noah Ohio is like you said, $2 to $3 million player, and sometimes it just, you can moneyball effectively, but it's a lower percentage game. It's harder to do. So that's sort of not the apprehension. I think it's just like the reality of expectation setting and all that stuff. Based on what I've seen of MLS clubs' track records with profiles like this, it's hard. It's very, very difficult. And we're going to see, I guess, assuming that this No Ohio deal gets done. I mean, Craig Weibel has said that he expects this, the expectation is on this player, whoever it might be, is to be able to contribute right away. So that was his expectation, not ours. So I guess we'll see if that pans out. Niko, anything else on No Ohio?
Yeah, the other thing, and again, not to shut this down or not to get people excited, but the reality is that No Ohio is one of the guys that's left from the scouting and the attempts to bring in players to fill this position. Obviously, the team has made multiple offers to other players that just by common sense would make you think that those were the guys that they were after, and now they are at No Ohio. So because of the budget situation and because you're not Atlanta and you're not LAFC and you can't just go out there and just buy the best of the best, I think that the scouting group is doing a great job at bringing in guys that have a specific profile that checks several boxes, if not all the boxes. And right now there are No Ohio. So it is a need for the Sounders. Their academy and the way they develop players here in Seattle has given them good fullbacks, good midfielders, but there's never really been an attacking player that has really shined out of the academy that I could think of. So this is something that you need to try to figure out, is how you develop these players, this exact type of players, so that you do have that generational change once Jordan Morris is off, and once you figure out exactly what you're going to do with your wing play and all of those things that I think everybody wants to see from this team moving forward.
Just a few more minutes to go before we call it a wrap on this episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. Thank you all, everyone, for tuning in, starting your week off with us here as we do every Monday morning. If you have not done so yet, please like the video. I don't know what the ratio is right now, but we got 100 plus people watching, and I can't imagine there's that we're that close to 100 likes yet. So let's get this stream to 100 likes. I like to see triple digits on these, but thank you guys as always for the support and for tuning in to the show. Niko, I guess to wrap it up here, we can talk about a couple of the other results from MLS and Matchday 22 that caught our eye. Maybe a little USMNT Gold Cup final. But I'll tell you, just from looking at the scoreboard and watching a lot of the games on Saturday, the ones that caught my eye were Inter Miami and Houston, San Diego. So Inter Miami, they smash on CF Montreal 4-1, which is not like a huge accomplishment in of itself. But I guess I wanted to bring a debate, that discussion that Noah and I were having, and get your take on it, Niko, because after Inter Miami bombed out of the Club World Cup against PSG, we were sort of taking stock of where things stand with the Messi and the Barca boys project in general. And Noah was saying, that he considers it pretty much a categorical failure because they have not won. Champions Cup and MLS Cup are the two most important trophies, I think, by most people's estimation, and they have not been able to win those. They kind of bowed out of the playoffs unceremoniously last year, and then Champions Cup they haven't gotten that close to winning. I don't quite see it that way. I think underwhelming and disappointing are fair adjectives to use when regarding their total trophy haul. But I do think that you have to acknowledge on the flip side of their shortcomings that they did win Leagues Cup, which whatever significance you want to put on that, some people think that's totally meaningless, but it is a trophy. And I do think there is significance and weight to the season that they had last year in winning the Shield and setting the points record, which that's where we got into, like, how much does the Shield really matter, and does the Shield carry less weight in MLS because it's not a balanced schedule like it is in other leagues who award their title winners by the regular season champion. I think regardless of whatever weight you put on the Shield, you have to acknowledge that they had an incredible season last year. And part of the lens that I'm thinking of this through is just like, your goal as a team and as an organization, yes, it is to win trophies. That's the ultimate goal at the end of the day. But there's also an element to it of like, are you giving your fans like a fun, compelling, entertaining product week in, week out, where when they go to the stadium, they expect to see some goals, they expect to win their games. Inter Miami last year very much did that, and I think there's value in that. There's value in your fan base just having a fun year where you're just running over every team and racking up 74 points. And when you have a team that's that dominant, like, and you're a supporter of that team, you go into every game like, all right, good luck to the other team because we got Messi and the Barca boys. We score 3 to 5 goals every game without even trying. Maybe we're going to put a couple past us, but it's not going to matter because our team is that good in attack. I think like I give a little bit of equity to that when I'm evaluating the success of their whole project, even though it definitely, like the trophy haul, when you look at it and it doesn't have MLS Cup in it yet, and it hasn't gotten particularly close to CONCACAF Champions Cup, I think that is definitely a disappointment relative to what everyone was expecting from Lionel Messi at Inter Miami. So Niko, I'm very curious, like, where do you stand on just your evaluation of their whole product as they come off what was a resounding win over CF Montreal? I know it's CF Montreal, so it doesn't count or whatever, but like, just watching CF Montreal's defenders try and defend Lionel Messi was just comical. He was just dancing through all of them on both of his goals, hitting these crazy passes, looking like 2011 Lionel Messi against CF Montreal. But yeah, what do you think of where things stand for Inter Miami and the Barca boys?
I think Inter Miami still has a lot to prove. I saw a lot of people be very, overreactive on a 4-1 win against a team that has 40 goals against all season, by far the worst team in the league, in my opinion, and a game that you started losing by a mistake by Leo Messi of putting a ball into the back line into a Montreal attacker. So to me, the Leo Messi project is always going to be judged by trophies. And although it's fun to have an entertainment team, if they are entertaining at that, if they don't have anything to back it up with, then you bring in the best player in the planet to play in MLS didn't do what it was going to do, which by all accounts is getting a trophy. And yes, they got Leagues Cup. We'll see what happens in this, Leagues Cup that's coming up, but you need to win your domestic league. I mean, that's the objective of every single team. Every single season that Lionel Messi has been in, it's about winning that domestic league. And I don't know if they have it. There's so many holes defensively for this team. I look at that midfield with Kramaski and Busquets and Allende and Segovia. They're all good on the ball and attacking, but defending, not so much. You got the two worst defending fullbacks duo in MLS in Cello and Alva. So I just don't know how they're going to outscore every single team moving up in the playoffs. Maybe they can do it, but they got to prove it. They are definitely not top 5 in MLS in general. If you combine all the teams, they're definitely not top 5 in the East. I think that they have a lot to prove, in my opinion. So teams like Cincinnati that are so much more balanced when it comes to the entirety of their team, defensively, midfield, attack. You look at a team like Orlando with all the depth, with all the youth, with all the speed. The list goes on. You look at San Diego, despite, a bit of a disorganized performance. I think that they ran out of gas against Houston. And Inali, man, that kid is fun to watch, man. I remember when he first came on MLS before he had that, I believe, ACL tear that he got. He was fantastic. He was just a speed abuser. I mean, he was a pace abuser all day long, and he gave San Diego, a whole bunch of issues. But San Diego's another team that, I feel like you could very easily say that has been better than Inter Miami in a longer scale and more consistently. So to me, Messi needs to win MLS. Otherwise, although not a failure, because MLS has benefited hugely from Messi coming over in all kinds of ways. So in that part has been a success, but as a team, if you're not winning any championships, then, what are we doing here? Who are we entertaining? I mean, the fans don't want to be entertained. They want to win. Ask the Philadelphia, how good it is to be the non-winner and just be the team that almost got there and that has a great academy and that plays hard. I mean, come on now. It's about getting some trophies. So at some point, that's what we're going to have to judge them on. And I do feel like the window's closing, because although I don't believe the reports that Lionel Messi is looking to be loaned out somewhere before the World Cup, I could see a future in where he moves on and then that window closes. Not to mention the fact that a guy like Busquets, probably that window's about to close, and that's where you get the Rodrigo de Paul possibilities and all of these things, because if you bring those sort of players, it's a win now mentality, and I feel like that's what you're seeing out of Inter Miami. We need to win now with this specific group.
It is pretty funny, isn't it, that an MLS club with Lionel Messi, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, and Luis Suarez is like the 6th or 7th best team in the league right now. Like, exactly. you see those clips get posted of Messi banging in goals against CF Montreal, and you do see comments that are like, "Oh, look at this Farmers League defending. What a joke of a league that he plays in." Brother, they're 7th in the Supporter Shield standings. Put them against FC Cincinnati, they'll probably lose. I'm not like I was just I was just being like deferential to their track record, and I've said for a long time that when they were at their peak form last year, they played some of the best attacking footy I've ever seen played in MLS, like without a doubt. Like I don't think you can deny that. And they still can tap into that level sometimes. But as it stands right now, they're closer to like a mid-table side than a side that's going to make a serious charge at the Shield or MLS Cup. Their points per game is still high, but they played a couple less games than everyone else because of the Club World Cup. And also just like, especially in the East, which is pretty stacked this year. I mean, I rate Cincinnati over them. I certainly rate Columbus over them, even though they destroyed Columbus earlier this year. So you don't need to, no one needs to point that out. I realize that. But just in terms of like who I rate higher as a club going into these games on a week in, week out basis, there's just a lot of teams that you could put over them.
I put Orlando over them. I really do. Nashville, I think that they're making a case. I mean, Sam Sturridge is very slowly becoming a big problem from everybody. I mean, he's probably going to be the Golden Boot at the end of the year. So there's a lot of good teams out there. So I'm with you. And not to mention that Columbus will go and get their big punch heavyweight that they're missing up top in this transfer window. Because if this team still had Cucho, it'd be a different story, but they don't. And I'm sure they're going to go get it in the transfer window. And that's going to completely change Columbus as a whole. So they're clearly going to be better. There's not a lot of bigger things happening for Inter Miami, despite of what you might hear. Maybe if they do bring the ball and those reports are correct, I mean, it'll be interesting. But I mean, he's still a midfielder coming in for a huge payday here. I don't know how much that changes what you are not doing. Well, I'll take that back. I think Rodrigo de Paul could provide some defensive stability for this team. But other than that, man, I mean, you still got two big old holes with Cello and Jordi on the flanks. So, yeah, I just think that there's a lot to be proven, in my opinion, for this Inter Miami team.
Niko, before we get out of here, let's talk about the Gold Cup real quick. That final was played yesterday, USMNT versus Mexico. I didn't watch much of it, but it sounded like a pretty good game. US ends up losing 2-1. So they could not get Poke, my guy Poke. I call him Poke. I know it's Poch. I call him Poke. Poke couldn't get his first trophy. But I will say, Niko, I've made no secret. I've been down on the USMNT and the golden generation. I think that's it's pretty clearly like propaganda at this point. But I wanted to say that, and I said it last night before I dish this take. Scott Curtis, $5 super sticker. Thank you so much for the support, man.
All right, appreciate Scott.
You. First super chat of the stream coming right at the end. So shout out to Scott. I wasn't gonna say anything. We were goose egging before that, but we got one. Okay. So that's fine. That's fine. Goose egging when we've had like 100 people watching for the last 30 minutes. I'm joking though. It's all good.
Come on, guys, give me another one.
Come on. USMNT versus Mexico. They end up losing 2-1. But I found this this Gold Cup squad, and it's not just because it had a lot of MLS guys or whatever. It just seemed like the guys that Pochettino called in were kind of more reminiscent of the days when this team was more likable and more successful. Guys that like the thing with the golden generation right now is like this team used to be identifiable with like playing for the badge. They weren't always going to win. They weren't always going to take results, but you never questioned their effort, commitment, and the work that they were going to put in to try and represent for the country, right? This golden generation, you just get this air of like, we're above this. We're like so good because we play for this club, this club, this club, and that club. And it's like, you guys are not that good. You have been less successful than Dempsey, Donovan, and the MLS boys, Graham Zusi. So where does this like air of superiority even come from? Certainly not anything you guys have done on the field. And so I've been annoyed with that kind of just whole aura that they have in that way for a long time. And I feel like this Gold Cup squad didn't have that as much. I feel like it became sort of like a team that I felt like I could root for again. So even though they lost to Mexico, that was kind of a nice feeling for me personally, just because I've been so soured on the whole federation, the program, the golden generation player pool. And it was nice to like watch the USMNT play a little bit in the Gold Cup and be like, this feels more like a squad I can get behind. Like Diego Luna is doing cool stuff. I'm a big Seb Berhalter fan. So it was nice. Maximum Dorcas, thank you for the $2. He says, just for you, Niko. Appreciate you.
All right.
We got
Hey.
two. So I'll take that. That's enough. I mean, if you guys want to give more in the last 4 minutes.
I appreciate that, though. Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Maximum Dorcas. Niko, any thoughts on the USMNT or just like the Gold Cup in general?
Yeah, this is what I'll say. I am with you in the terms of this team at least had that identity of aggressiveness and tempo and intensity that you want out of a national team. It felt like they were really bleeding the jersey. And, you know, as someone that in South America, and, you know, we've discussed this at the Sounders Clubhouse, is that players have to come and play for the national team at their best, because country always comes before club. And I feel like there are a lot of the best players like a Pulisic or a Vega that at times think of it oppositely, because they're getting their main money or their contracts depend more on the club than on the countryside. So in that aspect, I felt like Diego Luna to me was the best player for the US men's national team throughout this competition, because he plays with a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas. I mean, the guy has so much desire, so much want. He's so creative. He, you know, he's a goal scorer. He does it all. So a guy like that is someone that you do want moving forward. But the reality is that this team is an alternative squad, and not to make it an excuse, it's just a circumstance of what happened. Pochettino had to play with, I don't want to call it a B squad because I don't like that verbiage, but an alternative group, right? But you're going to need those top end guys at some point. I mean, Patrick Agyemang, as much as I like him and I think that he's going to develop into a really good player, he just didn't perform to the standard that you want your 9 to play at this level. And Mexico did. I thought that, you know, Raul Jimenez was fantastic throughout the tournament. You know, he, I believe, got to the 3rd all-time leading scorer list for Mexico. I'm a huge Alexis Vega guy. I think he's another guy that plays just angry and strong and bleeds for the badge. So they were just better. Mexico was better, and they have the better squad. They had more of a complete group of their pool players in today's day and age for Mexico rather than the United States. The issue that I see with this team is that they don't have an identity yet, and I'm putting that on Pochettino. They have not been able to really execute the soccer module that I believe Pochettino wants to play in. And if not just that, execution wise, look, Guatemala had a fantastic tournament, and it was exciting and it was cool, the things that we're able to do. But those sort of teams are so limited in talent that the United States and Mexico should have been so much better throughout the tournament. Now, because there is a level of competition that anytime that you play Mexico and anytime you play the United States, it's a win. Is a no-lose situation where, a team that has nothing to lose, like the Dominican Republic, giving Mexico jitters at one point during the group stage. All those teams play to a certain level, but the United States and Mexico should always be able to do better. So although this team did have a little bit more of that pride for the United States and what it represents, the top end talent just was not enough to beat a team like Mexico. And that's plain and simple. Now, the worst part about this, and moving forward and thinking more of a broader aspect, not just Gold Cup, is that we are, I don't know, less than 100 days, I believe, from the start of the World Cup, and you don't know who your goalkeeper is. You don't know who your 9 is. Is it Sargent? Is it Balgan, Fleuren? Is it who is it?
Still talking about this.
It's definitely not Patrick Adjemang. What about your midfield? Is it going to be a guy like Adams, and is it going to be a guy like Pulisic out wide with Vega out wide? I mean, there's just so many question marks that I just feel like this team is just not ready, because you don't have a core group that is ready and available to play for this national team. So to me, it was a failure of a Gold Cup. I feel like there are things that you can rescue out of this. The Diego Lunas, the Richards. I thought that Freeman was a guy that you're probably going to want to keep in your roster. But moving on forward, it was a failure. It is what it is. You did not win the Gold Cup, and therefore you failed.
I agree with that. All right. Got to take off on that, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning into the show today. Like, comment, subscribe, rate 5 stars, like the video, sub to the channel. We'll be back at it with keeping the content churning this week. Niko, thanks for hopping on as always. Appreciate you, man. And talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
Alrighty, guys.